Well, welcome. My name is Julie Stevens, and I teach here at USU. I'm a statewide faculty member, and I'm out of Central Utah. And my background, just to give a little bit, is I did a lot with my community mental health. I worked in schools, and I also worked with the Intergenerational Poverty Initiative in my rural community. So I got to work with my county and changing policies. So my background is really in this social work realm. And so I'm bringing my social work skills into this, how we can bridge it into our peace building. And I'll let Amanda introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Ford. I'm pretty new to USU. I've been here about a year in the social work department, and I also work in the Harvey Peace Institute, teaching their Introduction to Peacebuilding class, which is really fun. I've also connected and seen lots of overlap between social work and HPI since I've been here. So before I was at USU, I was at BYU Hawaii, teaching in the Intercultural Peacebuilding Studies class or program, teaching family classes, kind of more social work lenses looking at peace building through a social work lens with we did lots of relationship working on personal peace building. We did meditation and some like early skills on mediation, which is what we're going to talk a little bit more about today too. So I'm super excited to be at USU. Logan is very different than Hawaii, obviously. My family has decided that we call Logan our Logan Aloha because it's still like a small town and very sweet and people are very kind. The snow is a little different, obviously, but my kids are out snowboarding today using their surfing skills. So most of my kids grew up in Hawaii. My youngest was born there, and we were there for about 12 years. So a big transition here, but I'm super excited to be part of the social work team here. Yeah, and I really enjoy it. So we're excited to share how this overlap, bridging this peace building lens with social work. So I'm going to share my screen, I think, and try to see if this works. And then um, okay, sorry. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. You want to go ahead and just go over these real quick, Julie, and then
Yeah.
we'll switch.
So just to give you an overview so you kind of know where we're headed. What we'll be doing is we're gonna briefly be looking at conflict styles and what they are protecting. We want to then look into emotional regulation and mindfulness practices. Then we're going to be shifting into nonviolent communication as a shared language, and then being able to hold the space in polarized context. And as we move through this, just know that whatever your population is or how you come into conversation, connection with anybody else, that's kind of where we're seeing these skills used. So it can be something on the micro realm, or it can be something in the meso or even out in the macro realm as we try to use our skills in like mediation or being able to navigate or facilitate larger conversations.
Okay, so I wanted to start with just this idea of conflict. A lot of times when we think about peace studies, we also want to think about conflict. Obviously, they go together. So just in your first thoughts when you hear the word conflict, what do you think of if there is like a definition? And I'd love participation if anyone wants to like raise hands. I can't see all of you, but if you click the raise your hand or want to put stuff in the chat, Julie can read the chat for me. But just what comes to mind when you think about conflict? Or even if there's like a word or another definition that you have when you think of what does conflict mean for you? Sometimes that might hit like a personal note, but maybe even broader, like in your work, in your family, like where is conflict? What does it mean to you? How are you
So
feeling about it right now? Anyone want to share?
we have fighting, no peace without justice, high emotional output, discord, opposing sides, disagreement, opposition, emotionally charged disagreement,
Mm,
ideas that are opposed to each other, Antagonist disagreement. Yeah.
Awesome. Those are great. So as you listen to those words, what starts to come up for you? Like, are those positive? Do we feel like a sense of, oh, I don't want this? Is it scary? Do I run from it? Like, what's emotionally coming up when you think about conflict? Do we want it? Is it good?
We got discomfort, hurt, negative, dysregulation, unsafe, exhaustion, newness,
Hmm,
sometimes avoidance. Yeah. Anger. Yeah.
nice. Okay, so when I teach in the um
Run fast. Sorry, I just had to throw that one out there.
go, what
Run
was the last
fast.
one?
Run
Run.
fast.
Right. So a lot of times conflict is framed as negative. And I like using metaphors and thinking about like trying to make it a little more relatable. So if there's any metaphors that come to mind when you think of conflict, like I have my students do this, usually it's like volcano, like just like really hard things. Someone once said smog, which I thought was really interesting because it's like you can't see through it. It feels like very heavy and like you can't predict it. Like, is the smog coming? Is it going? I don't know where I'm going. Any other metaphors you guys might think of when you think of this conflict in your life or in the workplace or wherever it is in the world? There's a lot of it right now. So just thinking about like what metaphor comes to mind when you think about conflict.
Unstoppable force meets immovable object.
Mm,
Predator and prey. I like that one. Stormy.
yeah. Cool. So there was one time when we were teaching 121 and one of the girls, I think she was from Malaysia, she said, I think of a cocoon. And I was like, oh, that feels like, tell me more about that. So she said, in a cocoon, like I feel like the conflict is there and I'm kind of trapped. But the beautiful thing about it that she kept going is like conflict creates opportunity to grow and to become something better. And so this idea of like, can we shift our view of conflict to start to think of it less scary? Like we need conflict to grow, right? The cocoon is in this little trapped whatever happens in there scientifically, it's the most amazing thing actually. I like don't totally understand it, but it turns to like mush and then the DNA stays the same, but it becomes this like beautiful butterfly. So this idea that conflict can create growth and change, I think is really beautiful. And then I also like this idea of just defining it. Like if I were to give it a definition, this one makes the most sense to me. So, does someone want to read that? This is my chance to get you guys to try to talk. What is the definition here? Monica, I can see you. You're like the only, can you read that? Thanks.
Sure. Our inability to collaboratively solve problems with other people.
Okay. So if our inability to collaboratively, right, like we're working together to solve a problem, this to me helps me think, oh, if it's an inability, I can actually work to change that. Like I can start to say, oh, if I want to be able to collaboratively solve, then I can actually, there's some hope in that, right? That conflict doesn't have to be scary. That maybe I need some skills. Maybe I need some like deeper understanding of like, how do I look at conflict? How do I respond? That's why today we're going to talk about like our emotional responses, how we even communicate our needs, and we'll go through some of that. But first, before I do that, I wanted to, two different ways to also view conflict. I think that's helpful. Because yes, conflict can be negative or like looking at the red, the destructive, like it can kind of pull us apart, but it also can be constructive. So if you're thinking about destructive conflict, that's when we're not like communicating well, where there's lots of different um, ways that conflict obviously can be destructive if we're harming each other, we're not um, we're only looking at our needs. We're not looking at our enemy or like we're looking at the other person as an enemy. So we're not trying to like solve something. And so to be able to transform that to be more like this puzzle piece of like, oh, I can actually constructively work through a conflict. So transformation is, I think, a key word here. We're going to talk a lot about um, what to thinking about like different types of mediation. And one of them is called transformative mediation that we'll talk about. So this idea that we can shift from this destructive to a more constructive. Um, Does anyone else want to read since like half of it's covered for me on the screen and I don't know how to fix it?
I can read.
Thanks, Alexander.
Thanks. Knowing how to transform destructive conflict into constructive conflict is critical to our personal, professional, and social well-being. Yet, by and large, we're terrible at it.
Okay, would we agree? Like just when conflict comes, we don't know what to do. I'm like, oh, I know I can like fix this. Even like thinking about your personal life, like who do you struggle with? Like, is there people in your life that you end up not knowing how to do it? And I mean, if we think about I actually like to stay a little closer, like maybe your partner or if you have kids or a neighbor, like, or maybe not even neighbor yet. Like first, just think about the people closest to you, like where are you at with them? If there's a conflict, what do you do? Like, how are you responding to them? And then someone else want to read this? And this is just my partner's name is Chad Ford, and he wrote a book called Dangerous Love. And a lot of the teachings that we use in our introduction to peace building class comes from Dangerous Love. So I like to talk about it. But can someone read this quote?
I can. Hi.
Thank you. Is it Karina?
Doesn't have to be scary. It can actually be the catalyst that helps improve our relationships. If we process the right tools, it should transform it from destructive to constructive conflict.
Okay, so what are we looking for here? It's a catalyst. And what else? Anything else, Karina, stood out to you?
We need the right tools
Yeah.
so that we can have it be constructive.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get some of those tools today. Okay, so I want you to think like I asked you earlier, like who are you in conflict right now? And sometimes when we go through skills and we're going to learn about conflict styles, it helps if you have a specific person in mind. And I would suggest trying to stay close to home, like somebody that you see maybe like even daily or weekly, um, that feels like you're frustrated with. And it doesn't have to be like a huge, I always tell my students, like, don't think of something that you need to go to therapy over. Like, this is more of like, just for today's practice, thinking of just something you're frustrated or a relationship that you just wish was a little bit better. So I want everyone to just take a minute and think of like, who can I think about today? Like while we're going through these exercises, like who do you want to focus on? Sorry, I'm trying to move it so I can see. Okay. Okay, so after you have that person in mind, we're going to think about conflict styles. So before we even go into these, um, normally I would have you like take a little quiz. So Julie and I decided we'll give that to you at the end so that you don't start doing it while we're talking and get super distracted. But I'm going to offer the conflict styles. And with this person specifically that you're struggling with, that's the person I want you to think about, like, how am I responding to them right now? So here's the 5 different conflict styles. And I like that it's on this quadrant, right? So if we look at well, let's start on the bottom. So this low self-concern and low other concern is avoiding. And so I want you to think, okay, am I avoiding the conflict with this person right now? Or am I more self-concerned and not really thinking about them as much? And maybe I'm more competing. Or maybe you're compromising and you're giving up something and to try to just like make it more even or feel like, okay, it's okay. And then the last one is accommodating, or not the last one, but well, I say the last one because a lot of people aren't quite at collaborating. My guess is there's probably not a strong conflict if you're collaborating with them. So accommodating, what would that look like? Whose concerns are you mostly focused on? Right, you're really focused on them, and then you're not as much thinking about your own concerns. Okay, so I want, as you're thinking about this, we're going to split you up into groups, and I've heard a rumor that you don't really like breakout rooms. So please don't leave if we put you in a breakout room. I think it's really helpful to do small groups, and if you hate talking, that's okay. Let the other people talk. Hopefully there'll be a lot of you. So avoidance is usually our biggest group. Avoidance or accommodating. And so let's just go over real quick. Raise your hand if you feel like you already know, like I'm an avoider, but I can't see everyone. I can see Cassie, Erin. Okay, so what would that look like if you're avoiding a conflict. Maybe someone want to share, like, what are you doing right now to avoid it? Do you like ignore their text or you just act like everything's fine? Just pretend like here it says like suffering in silence, like you just don't really want to even look at the thing. And then the need that it fulfills, I think, is also important to look at, just that you're trying to protect yourself because of that fear of the conflict. And then if we were to shift, I really want to move my screen because I can't see. Sorry, guys. Okay, sorry. We're just going to skip to accommodating. So raise your hand if you feel like you're accommodating. Okay, and what would that look like? Emma, can you share something that accommodators do?
I feel like I adapt a lot and uh also kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Disconnect a bit from like my body and my needs and like put other people first.
Yeah, so that disconnection to like make sure that their needs are met. So does it feel
Mhm.
like when we're accommodating, our needs maybe don't matter as much as the other person?
Yeah, like I'm more in tune with the needs of others than my
Yeah.
own a lot of times.
I feel
Mhm.
like that's very common for social workers. We use that empathy a lot and maybe a little too far over here. So we're often accommodating the needs of other people. Who else feels like that kind of resonates? I think Elizabeth, did you have your hand up?
I did. So I am perfectly fine out in public. Shh, Bubby's on the call. I am perfectly fine in public with strangers, with my clients. But when it comes to my own daughter who's currently living in my house, I bite my tongue. I don't tell her how I feel. I tell her I'm busy. She's like, Mom, what's wrong? Nothing, I'm fine. Everything's great. And so yeah, I get very accommodating and avoidant with my own child.
Mm. Right. But then not so much. I really like that, Elizabeth, that you could share that it depends on the relationship. And
Yeah.
sometimes we tend to be more one style depending on, right? If maybe if we're a boss, we feel like we can be more competitive, or maybe if it's at work. I don't know, Elizabeth, what's some other styles that creep in when you're not with your daughter?
Okay, so I spent 15 years in the military before I was medically retired. So I tend to be, and being a female, I tend to be very, very direct, very straightforward. I generally have no problem telling people how I think, but then when it comes to my own child, I'm like, oh, I don't want the drama. I don't want the arguments. I don't want the, oh my God, Mom, why are you being so this or that? And so I shut down. But normal, like I had a client whose dad was being just difficult to deal with. And I had no problem reminding him that he was here for his child,
Mm,
not for his own ego. No problem with that.
mm.
Meanwhile, my child can't pick up after herself, and she is an adult. And I can't look at her and go, oh my God, you're a grown ass adult, pick your shit up. Instead, I'm like picking it up for her,
Mm.
sending little passive aggressive texts like, hey, it would have been nice if the living room had been cleaned up. And so it's really frustrating when I can do it with people that I
Yeah.
have no personal relationship with. I'm fine. I can hold a boundary. I can be very direct. I can be kind when necessary. And then it comes to my own child and I'm like,
Okay. Does anyone else relate to like being, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
difficult.
actually in the chat as well that it's
Oh,
like
okay, read it for us.
relatable. Like I really relate. And um, then there was also like, can it change? Like, can it both be avoiding conflict and accommodating? So
You want to speak to that, Julie, at all, or any any thoughts on
I
that?
I put in yes, and it can actually
Yeah.
change while you are in conflict with the person. And so like Elizabeth, where you're just kind of like here, you're like, here, I'm doing the passive aggressive. Sometimes it's like, can a passive aggressive allows for us to like avoid, like, oh, I sent this, and so now like I can almost like become avoidant. Like I'm not going to look at my phone anymore because I sent that. So I'm going to now avoid the conflict. So we can see these different conflict styles can come up even as
that
we're
is
in the middle of
exactly it.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that and for sharing in the chat. Just super relatable. So I think it's important to look at the need that it fulfills And I also, maybe this is a good time to point, because I feel like I'm definitely more of an accommodator, and avoider, both of them. And it depends on the person, but this idea that this is like who I always am, or like kind of pigeonholing ourselves into a certain, like sometimes that happens with personality types. If anyone's done like Enneagrams, they'll be like, oh, I'm such a two, and it becomes like an excuse, or like a crutch. But I think it's important to say, okay, I'm recognizing that I do this with my daughter, or I recognizing that sometimes accommodating, works fine. And it's not, my needs are, maybe it's because that certain thing doesn't really matter. Like if we're deciding where we're going to go out to eat, my husband really wants to go to a certain place. I'm like, either one, pizza's good, Thai's good, whatever you want. Like I can accommodate and do what he wants, and that makes things fine. But if it's something about something that I really care about, or I feel like I really value, if I start to accommodate, what starts to happen? That need is being filled, right? Oh, he likes me or she likes me because I'm accommodating. But then what happens? Does anyone feel like they've accommodated a lot in their life? Does it ever feel like it's like I'm kind of tracking it, and then I have this resentment that starts to build up? And it's hard once you start all of a sudden saying, hold on, I'm going to put my foot down. They're like, wait, you always like, what's happening? What, like out of nowhere. So I think it's important to just recognize what the need is. And if I can say, okay, if I can stand up and say that my needs matter as much as their needs matter, this need to be liked would still be there, but it starts to shift into feeling like, okay, yeah, I understand that my conflict style might be natural, and I might have to start to work on it. And so I think that's the skill part where it comes in. Like, I need to start being able to practice it and be okay that maybe that might throw somebody off, or they might not look like they like me as much. But being able to practice it, I think, is really helpful. Emma, you want to share?
Yeah, just I had a thought of like the role that it plays to like be socialized with like the gender constructs, specifically when you mentioned picking the restaurant, right? And it made me think of like all of these times that I default to, okay, what do you guys want? Because
Mm.
I don't care either way. And then I just think, I don't know, maybe there was a time that I did care, and I'm just so used to defaulting to that
Yeah.
because it's how I've been socialized.
Yeah, I think that's really important to remember. A lot of our styles do come from either the way we were raised, or right, our environment that we're in. Gender dynamics for sure have a role in that. And so just learning to recognize them, I think, is the first step. Like recognize how often you accommodate, and when am I doing it when it's actually something I care about. Okay, so competition. This is what I feel like people don't usually want to admit, because maybe there's some, I don't know. If we think about sports, it's okay to be competitive, but is it okay to be competitive in our relationships? Anyone want to say they're like, they know, like, oh yeah, I'm competitive? Alexander, you shaking your head like, no, we're
I
not going to
totally
admit
am.
it, or like, no, you don't, you're not that.
I it's actually one of my flaws. If we're playing a game and I'm like, yeah, you just go ahead and win, it makes it so boring and awful. I'm not a competitive bone in my body.
Okay. And sometimes right, that
Argument,
might be,
like whatever.
yeah. So some people might get annoyed because you're not like
Oh,
saying,
oh yeah, oh yeah.
okay. And then, so anyone want to say they do feel like that's their typical, or maybe thinking about that conflict again, who you're in conflict right now, are you being competitive? And what does that look like when competition comes in as your conflict style?
Mm.
Someone want to share?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
I think I'm on camera. Um, this actually just happened to me yesterday. I don't think I'm a naturally competitive person, but I was in an all-day staff meeting and I found myself getting a little competitive with
Mhm.
um, ideas that were being put out. It was just really interesting because I can see that I use all these different styles with different people in different situations. I wouldn't normally say competition is my default setting, but boy, it can certainly come out situationally. And
Okay.
that was a little revelatory for me last night as I reflected on the meeting and how it went. And and observing the power plays and all of those things. It was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, right. Did it look like any of these, like arguing, debating, maybe trying to get something that you feel like you need out?
Absolutely, competing views
Mm,
of the direction that should be pursued.
mm.
Absolutely,
And that need to fulfill, like maybe it's because it's something you value that you feel like that your position is correct.
very much so.
Yeah. And so that
Very
need to be
much
right
so.
feels, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks for sharing.
And in the chat, we also have two other people
Go
that are
ahead,
like,
Julie.
I am totally competitive and I can be competitive for sure. So we're starting to see our conflict styles.
Yeah. Anything else, Julie, that you want to share?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go well, almost the last one. So compromise. I feel like when I learned about compromise, I'm like, oh yeah, when I think about compromise before I really understood conflict styles, I was like, oh, that's what we're trying to do. Like we're trying to compromise so that both parties are happy. Or like if my kids come to me, I'm like, you guys are fighting, like I'm going to make you guys compromise so that you're both going to be okay. But if we think about, I love this picture in the middle because this idea of this orange, there's a story or a little metaphor with the orange that, let's say it's my daughters. They both come to me, they're fighting over an orange. And I say, okay, let's cut it in half. You both get your share. And then one later, after they like, oh, okay, fine, I got my orange, come and say, I just needed the juice because I wanted to make orange juice. And the other ones, I just needed the zest, but now I don't have enough zest. Um, who's happy in the situation? Like we think that it's fair, and I think that that comes up a lot, especially with like our ethics or as a social worker, like I need things to be just and fair, but that doesn't always equal both parties getting what they need, and so the needs aren't always met when we compromise. So splitting the difference, giving up things that maybe you want. And so if we're thinking about this in like a mediation context, if we just end up compromising and we don't actually ask the parties, like let's say the parties are arguing about maybe like how they split their time or if they want the weekends and you just say, well, we're just going to do it fair. You're going to get 50-50. But then the husband actually maybe says, oh, I didn't want weekends. I just needed Monday through Wednesday because that's my day off. Or like we didn't dive deep enough to ask the questions to make sure that both parties actually get what they need. So compromise can be good. Anyone feel like that's like their go-to? They feel like that's like, oh, I'm just going to make it fair. And maybe think about why. Why would we use compromise? Katie, is it, oh, sorry, Kelly. Or if anyone's, yeah,
Yeah,
go.
I'll go. Um, I just compromise because I want it to hurry and be done.
Yeah, good.
I just want to like move on.
Yeah.
Like it's a waste of time and energy. And
Mhm.
so let's figure something out so we can move past it.
Yeah.
Like, there you go.
Yeah. And it usually feels like, okay, it's fine. At least I don't have to deal with you guys arguing, or the conflict feels like it's solved. So sometimes compromise works, and maybe that's the only solution that we have at the time if the parties aren't talking to each other, or if we don't have time, we're going to at least make it feel fair. And does resentment ever come with this one? How do you think resentment could show up in this if we're compromising?
I think to your point that you were saying earlier, Amanda, like if someone doesn't take the time to really understand what you're trying to say and they're just so focused on a compromise, that can be super frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm going to go through this so we can split up into our group. So the last one is collaboration, which if we look at that chart, remember it's the top one. So we're top corner, the right. So both their needs and my needs are equally important, that they both matter. So the need that it fulfills, which I like this idea of actually being in relationship, right? If we're compromising, we're actually not focused on the relationship. We're just focused on making it fair. But if we're collaborating, we're asking questions, we're being curious, the values for both parties matter evenly. And I think this is the goal, right? In transforming a relationship, collaboration and that conflict style is what's going to help us get there. So a lot of times when people take the test and they get this, I always just want to follow up and say, That's awesome. Like that you have those skills, that you're working on that. But I want you to think of that specific conflict again. Like the person that you're in conflict with, are you collaborating? And what does that look like? And if you're not, and if you tend to be, or if in that specific example you're using a different style, what does that style look like right now? And how can you start to shift towards collaboration? Okay, so again, here's that chart. So looking again at your conflict, now that we've kind of understood them a little bit better, where are you at right now with the person that you're struggling with? What skills are you using and what, because these can all be helpful in different situations. And the idea that collaborating is what's going to help move the relationship to transforming it or to healing that relationship. Okay, so we're going to take a minute. I know you guys don't love these, so we won't take too long, but it's fun to go get to know each other. So Julie's going to put together some breakout rooms with these styles. And I want you to go into that breakout room and just talk about a couple of these things. So think about what's the outcome when you use that style. What is it working for you? And then also, what do you wish other people understood about why you're accommodating or why you're competing, or maybe if you're feeling misunderstood in a conflict because of your conflict style, then we're going to come back and you guys can teach us a little bit about those styles. So once you're in your breakout group, talk about these things and then decide if one of you want to come back and share with the rest of us, like what you guys kind of came up with as a group. So please don't run away. We would love to have you guys in these groups.
I labeled the room so that you guys can choose which one you feel like is calling to you.
Everyone's back now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for being willing to talk. I got to jump into most of the rooms and see some good conversation going and some self-reflection and try to understand ourselves a little bit better about the conflict that we're in. I'd love to hear from each group, at least one or two of you so let's start with avoiding. If I know I heard some really cool ideas about why, maybe about fear or something like that that came up. So anything you guys want to share about that conflict style avoiding?
I think what I noticed in our discussions is that avoidance meets the need of trying to maintain a relationship, or feels like it could help maintain a relationship, by skirting around those problematic and forever, controversial points. And that also it helps us preserve our own sense of mental health and stability by avoiding conversations and relationships that feel like they can really tear us down. I think it also came with this sense of, and at the same time, minimizing maybe our own needs, distrusting other people to actually be capable of hearing and meeting those needs, which may have been fair. I mean, I don't know. And then this question of what is really a relationship we're wanting, if it does come at a cost of modifying that relationship in a way that isn't authentic and open.
Great. Thank you, Alexander. That's really helpful. Anything else about avoiding that maybe you feel misunderstood? Or I think Alexander covered a lot of really important things, but if anyone else wants to share that was in that group. Okay, we can move to accommodating.
Barbara, I see that your mic is off, but that doesn't mean that you have to talk. I just wondered if
But
you
you can.
wanted to talk.
All I did was nudge the mouse and it did that. Well, first of all, I have to say how validating it was to be able to share. I think, some of the echoes of what Alexander said. I think one of the common themes is we're accommodating is the price we're paying to try and maintain a relationship, which we don't know how else to maintain, either for a number of reasons. In my case, it's a very, very fiery child, and accommodation seems to be on what I've landed on to maintain that relationship. I think one of the really great points that was brought up is often the relationship seems to be more important to us than the other party. And so I think accommodation kind of lends itself to that fear, as well as, we're not going to be able to collaborate because they don't care the way I care about maintaining this. And so those are some good thoughts to kind of think about.
Yeah. Thanks, Barbara. And then did we do accommodate?
That was accommodate.
Oh, you were, so we did avoid, accommodate, compromise. Does anyone want to share from that group? Shannon, were you in compromise or compete? Compete. We're going to get you next. Okay. Compromise. Just one person want to share.
We can compromise it to the comment only being 30 seconds long if you want.
I was just because there was discussion about that we need to make sure it's a mindful process when we're in compromise, because sometimes I think it was Jordan made the comment that sometimes we're compromising with ourselves and sometimes we're compromising with others. So just being mindful of that, and not feeling that we're because sometimes excessive compromise can feel like avoidance. I guess that's some of the high points that I remember, but other people can chip in.
I think other people also talked about the benefits of that can come when it's done the right way. Where like it's a pragmatic way of dealing with conflict, and it's when it's done in its best way, right? And it is also collaborative. It needs to be. I think that's another thing that some other people said.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jordan. I think that's really important. I'm hearing this move to collaboration as like a compromise. If we're doing it correctly, mindfully, it can shift into this more collaborative idea where we're helping both parties get their needs met. I will say, and sometimes there's a mediation where a compromise is the only solution. If the parties aren't willing to open up or share, or there's like sometimes the compromise just needs to be done. Julie, will you read that comment?
Yeah, it says, and it's harder to get to a good compromise when there are imbalanced power dynamics.
Yeah. That comes up a lot, and that's hopefully the goal of the mediators, to help balance those imbalances, to be able to be that third party that sees the power imbalances and can help speak to both parties more equally so that they both of their needs get heard and met. All right. Do you want to do competitive? I know, where'd she go? Who was doing competitive? Oh, Shannon, do you want to share? Anyone else from competitive want to share?
Yeah, I'll share. Like, I didn't need to take your quiz to know I'm competitive. And that is how I grew up. That is how my siblings are. We are all competitive. So you can imagine growing up in a household with three competitive conflict personalities, it led to lots of conflict. Like, I mean, we're talking people have had stitches. There were like lots of physical fighting as well as verbal fighting. But one thing that I noticed growing up in a family with like competitive like that is that any outsider came in and tried to compete against one of the other of us, then it united us all and we would fight against that person, right? And we all had so it was interesting to hear other people's perspectives, but for sure I have a problem of I feel like I always have to be right. And that in any argument, and that gets me in trouble a lot on Facebook, or on social media in general. But I will say that like sometimes the you have to shift to that collaboration, right? And that's I think something that as we've gotten older, my siblings and I have learned how to navigate with each other. That yes, we're competitive, but we can also collaborate and, be united and like making sure our parents' needs are getting met, etc. So I think that there's good and bad sides to all being the same kind of conflict style. Because then when we got in relationships ourselves with people who were not competitive, it caused conflict too, because then you have to figure out how to navigate that, right?
Yeah. Great. Thank you everyone for doing that self-reflection and trying to look at both the hard things that come from those styles and then also that sometimes they can be super helpful and they can help get your needs met. I remember one of the like insights that I got, because I'm not very competitive. I actually like very much steer away from competitive. But somebody was explaining it as the way they grew up, actually, they weren't competitive and they grew up in a home where they felt like their needs weren't met. And that was really hard for them. And so as they got older, they felt like they needed to be more competitive so that their needs could get met. And so, I mean, it just depends, right? Like in what environment you're growing up, what your situation is, who you're in conflict with will shift the way that you respond. And so just recognizing that these conflict styles can be both helpful to get your needs met, right? If you aren't able to speak up and then you learn to use your voice and that sounds competitive to other people, but that could be helpful for you. But there's lots of different reasons and value in the way that we collab or use our conflict styles. And now let's talk about how do we shift into being more collaborative, because if that's our goal. So I'll share that screen one more time to show you guys again, like why. And then as I'm doing that, think about like, what would it look like in the conflict you're in now to shift? If I'm avoiding it, what could I do one thing more to move towards collaborative? And I'd love to hear some ideas. If you guys think like, okay, what could I do? Is it answer the text when they call? Is it, or like respond? Is it actually put myself in their space? Ask questions? Is it starting to be more curious? Like, what would it look like to be more collaborative in that specific example that you guys are thinking of?
So I can share something really quick.
Monica?
I'm sorry, I'm at my neighbor's taking her dogs out. So if I have to start yelling. Anyway, so I have a daughter who has had a chronic illness for the past 9 years. And I feel like I've been in a very accommodating space for her. Just, I don't want to upset her, don't want to, rock the boat, any of that kind of stuff. So I accommodate. Um, but we had a discussion last week that kind of, it was from her, and she's 21 now. She's in a space where she wants her autonomy and she wants to be in charge of her life, which she should be. But I have felt very much responsible for her life. So it's been a tricky, like, um, transition. And um, we actually we taught we like I think we're kind of in a codependent relationship. So we've talked every day, multiple times a day, right? And then this last week it kind of stopped and we stopped talking for a few days. And then met up yesterday and we're able to kind of have this discussion like, hey, how do we move forward from here? What is it that we're looking, what do you need from this? And how can I be supportive? And it's been an interesting, we're not there yet, but I think we're getting to that place of collaborating where it's like, I have needs. I have my own feelings and emotions about this situation. She has her own feelings and needs about the situation, and being able to see the two and recognize the difference that we are separate people and she needs to do her thing and I need to do my thing, and that I can still care for her, but not in an overbearing way. And so being able to kind of talk through that a little bit with her was actually very healing. And I think we're kind of in that space of moving forward collaboratively rather than avoiding the issue or me trying to accommodate everything for her. And you know, anyway, I hope that made sense.
Yeah. Super helpful. That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that, Monica. Those transitions can be really tricky, and it sounds like learning to ask the questions to each other and to yourself, like what are my needs? What are her needs? And I think in all of our conflicts, if we start to look at that person's humanity as not the enemy or the person that's causing us, I'm not that your daughter feels like an enemy, but maybe feels like the conflict is like, I can't even like go, I just need to keep doing what I've been doing because that's all I know. And so sometimes it's scary to start to do something different that might look different for both of you. So again, just inviting each of us to think about that conflict we're in. And I want you to think about the person specifically. And I want you to think of something that might be hard in their life right now, like something that maybe they're struggling with that makes their life hard. Because I think it's easy for us to be like, I have all this stuff going on. Like my life is really hard, so you should be the one that turns to me. But if I can start to just shift a little bit, even to just ask, like, what is it that they're struggling with? And that's going to help us start to shift. And then I'm going to ask you to ask yourself one more question. The thing that they're struggling with, is there any way that I'm adding to that in their life? Am I making that harder? What am I doing to add to their struggle or the things that make their life hard right now? And then when we start to see the people we're in conflict with as a whole person, as right, this their divinity or their light or whatever it is that we want to start to shift to see them more fully, I think that allows us space to open up and start to collaborate. So we're going to shift for a minute. I'm going to have Julie talk about emotional regulation, not breakout yet. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Okay. So I'm going to just turn the time over to Julie. Thanks.
So as we as mental health therapists or just in this learning space, we kind of understand how the vagus nerve hits every part of our body and how it, when it's active, it's really hard for us to calm ourselves, make the best choices, really open up our focus to allow things to happen. So when we start to even think about the conflict as we have, even now as we're starting to get curious, that's a good way for us to kind of come back into the space of regulation. But again, we want to notice when things happen within ourselves because we have to be regulated to be able to create space or to be able to create this peace building and work towards these skills that we're looking for. So again, this regulation, we want to be present. And by doing that, the more that we can be present, the more that we can see how am I actually adding to the conflict? What am I doing that maybe like when I'm really unregulated, like I just like to poke the bear, but sometimes I like to be like, oh, I'm just asking a question, right? Sometimes these things can happen when we're really dysregulated. Whereas now I want to come back into the present. I want to bring myself back into this conflict and be like, you know what? I see what I was doing there. Um, and now I just need to take a minute to regulate because this can conflict really does push us out of our window of tolerance. It allows us to like kind of shut down and our prefrontal cortex goes offline. And now we're just like relying on our habits, these conflict style habits that we've created over the years. And just like you guys said, right, we're trying to protect ourselves. That's why these conflict styles have come up. So when I come back into a place of regulation, this allows me to start connecting. This allows me to start clarifying with the other person to be able to create, like, okay, I see you, I see me, I see our needs, and kind of open up to this vulnerability that needs to happen while we're within this conflict, right? Like when I say this is the need I need, and my conflict style is trying to protect that, now I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to try and bring this out. And it doesn't have to be like full force, here's my needs, right? Step and jump into this vulnerability. It can be something that we slowly work towards. And then as we start to feel ourselves shut off or become dysregulated, then okay, how can I then bring back into that regulation? To allow to open back up because connection is going to be key. So there's different levels of the stress that kind of requires different regulation tools. Amanda, did you have? Okay.
If I think before we do the breakouts, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. If you want to, let's maybe evaluate. Do we want to do a practice all together? I think that might be helpful. And then if we have
Yeah.
time and they feel like we can do breakouts, I don't know how to
Okay.
clear. Sorry.
It's all good.
For some reason, mouse will not let me.
Technical difficulties. It happens.
I
We're
want to
on
stop
Zoom.
sharing, but it won't let me. Maybe Erin can help. Can you make me stop sharing? There, I did it. Okay. Gosh.
Okay. So as one of our objectives, we really want you guys to be able to kind of have like different skills because not only is my nervous system different than all of y'all's nervous systems, it's going to be different than the person that I'm in conflict with or different than those that I'm trying to mediate with. So we want to be respectful and be aware that what works for my nervous system isn't going to work for everybody else's. So when we talk about mindfulness, when we talk about meditation, when we talk about emotional regulation, all of these words that come up, right? We want to make sure that not only ourselves that we play around with what works for our nervous system, but we need to have in our toolbox a couple different techniques to be able to respect the person's nervous system that we're working with. And so if, sitting for a few minutes might cause distress, we need to be able to be aware of that and kind of check in. If moving around, we actually see a calmingness happen, then we know, oh, okay, this person needs it more moving. So, one technique that I really like that we'll kind of go into is I usually have my coffee with me, but today I'm actually drinking water. Yay, hydration. So, um, whatever drink you have, I just call it the mindfully drinking tea is what I call mine, but that's just because I usually have my tea. But it can be just mindfully drinking. Um, I like to feel like, okay, is it hot? Is it cold in my hands? Like this is like a metal container, so it's a little bit heavier than I usually have, but the weight actually kind of feels nice. And I kind of just like bring myself into it and I can smell. All water smells different, but I think Holden has the best water. I'm a little biased. Um, we have the best spring water. Okay. Um, so we can smell it. If there's steam coming off of it, you can kind of feel like the steam. If it's cold, then that's going to be like we can anticipate it. And then I would invite to take a drink. And I just let it like sit in my mouth for a minute so you can kind of like what flavors do you taste? What is going on? Is it hot? Is it cold? Does it feel refreshing? Where we've been talking for a little bit, it's like, oh, that's nice. Right? I can feel it like as I swallow, and I can kind of feel it like as it goes through my system. All of these great things. But this can be like my little moment of like, okay, I just need to bring myself back. Like if I've been in conflict, I just say, give me a second. I'm just going to drink some water, just take a breath while I drink it. And this allows me to just, okay, I can bring myself back into the present. There's nobody who's going to judge me on my needs of what I'm drinking. So that is just a quick um, tool in your toolbox. And this can actually be really helpful when you're mediating and there's like a lot of tension and energy and people are starting to become really, really activated. I usually just pull out my like pitcher of water and I'm just like, hey, I think right now is the best time for us all to just like take a drink. I know when I start getting activated or when I start getting emotional, I just need something. And so by redirecting and allowing people to have something to hold, sometimes they can kind of just be like, I don't want to drink. And it's like, that's okay. I'm just offering. It's fine. I'm just here. And it just allows enough for people to just kind of take that deep breath. And as they're drinking, it also causes them to hold their breath for a minute and then like release. And so this can be a really good tool.
Okay, I wanted to share my screen again. Did it work?
It did.
Oh, okay, guys, sorry. So I love this idea. I don't love it because it's hard to do, but I actually think it's really important. The idea of like looking at where we're activated. And sometimes like even for ourselves, it's hard. So I want everyone to just, if you were to have a barometer from like 0 to 10, and 10 is like I feel very calm and relaxed, and 0 is like I'm very agitated. My nervous system is really dysregulated. So like even just right now, like there's no like harm coming to us. You're probably, well, some of you might be outside driving, so you might be a little more agitated. But if you're just sitting in your office or wherever you're at and home, where are you at? Are you neutral? Do you have like a sense of where you're at? Because I think that's really important. What Julie mentioned is like we have to know where our clients are at. We can't just be like, okay, come in and like let's take 5 deep breaths together and sit really still. And they're like, that's not helpful at all. So I think it's important. So can you just name right now, like how activated is your nervous system? And then how do you know whether it's for yourself? How do you know? Because I always think with any practice, like we've got to learn how to do it for ourselves, just like those complex styles. Like I can't help my clients until I can figure out what the heck is like, what am I doing so that I can understand them. And then these are just a couple of those ideas. So if we're highly activated, these are some of the things like drinking water would be really good. Anything that's not, because again, if I just sat you down and had a client come in, or even for myself, if I'm like, oh, I just need to like sit down and listen to music and close my eyes and I'm going to meditate, like that won't work for me. It actually will probably make it worse. So knowing and naming where we're at is really important. So I wanted to do one of the breathing exercises, but just to mention, this would be once that nervous system feels like either moving or stretching. Sometimes I literally will just be like, okay, and maybe you all can do that really quick. Like, see how that feels if you just literally like pull your hands up above your head, maybe like reach over to one side. I'm a yoga teacher, so a lot of movement always is like, yep, that feels really good. Yep, oh, I needed to do that. I didn't even know. Like, maybe I can just pull my ear to my shoulder and see, like, oh, how does that feel? Oh, yep, my neck's super tight. Like, just start to move our bodies. Maybe I can like even give myself a little hug. And maybe it's tapping, maybe just getting that right and left brain working, that bilateral movement. So movement's going to be super helpful. So I'm going to do a breathing one with us really quick. Again, this would be like once we've settled in and we feel like we can actually sit, and that would be helpful, not unhelpful. Okay, so if you want to just get comfortable, I'm just going to guide you through a couple breathing exercises. And what I'll do is just like a very simple body scan. And then afterwards, I'm going to invite you to think about like what practices do you guys use with clients if you have clients, or sometimes with kids, or maybe it's just with yourself. But I'll just once everyone feels like they're settled, I'll just do a quick little guided body scan and breathing. So first, just pay attention, see how your body feels as it starts to settle. Notice your breath. Where do you feel it the most? When you breathe in, do you feel it at your nostrils? Do you feel it at your throat? Where does that breath feel like you can actually pay attention to it? Maybe it's all the way in your belly already. And then on the exhale, how does that feel? What's the temperature? Are you breathing out of your nose or your mouth? So we're just bringing awareness to our breath. That's it. That's all we're doing. Just breathe in and breathe out. And then we're just going to scan our body. So starting at the top of our head. So as I name the parts of your body, just bring your awareness there. Notice the top, the scalp, any tingling sensations, or how does that feel? As you move down to your forehead, you can bring your attention there. So intentionally start to soften the body parts. So soften your forehead, take out any tightness that might be between your eyebrows, and then your eyelids. Relax your jaw. Move down your throat. And the next time you swallow, just notice how that feels in your throat. And relax your shoulders. Let there be weight in your elbows, so it feels like your shoulders are pulling away from your ears as you lengthen your spine a little. So you want to just sit up a little bit taller, letting there be space in the heart center. So the chest area, you want to pull back your shoulder blades, drop your shoulders, and just bring your attention right here to your chest. So the next breath, you're going to breathe in to make the chest expand. So that's a big chest breath. And then we're going to move down to our belly. Sometimes it helps. I like to invite a hand on your belly and then a hand on your chest, so you can feel where the inhale is coming in. So if you can move that breath, you can track it down to your belly on the inhale. The belly comes up like a big balloon, and then it softens as you exhale and relaxes. And we'll do that a couple more times. So just breathe into your belly. And then let that breath go. And just relax. Let the breath come in naturally as you move down to the seat. Feel the chair or whatever you're sitting on. Just feel that supporting you as you lengthen your spine again. You're sitting up tall but relaxed and just present with your body. You're going to move down to our thighs, our knees, our kneecaps, the backs of our knees, our shins and our calves, the tops of our feet and the soles of our feet. So you're just here with your body, being more present, letting go of the distractions, letting our mind, I like to imagine like a snow globe, it starts to settle. Little snow starts to slow down, those thoughts start to settle. We're just here with our body. Now we're going to do a little counting. So I'm not going to count for you, but I'm going to have you count. So as you breathe in, you're going to count to 4. And then your exhale is going to get a little bit longer. So try to exhale all the way to 6. So just try to lengthen that exhale a little bit longer than the inhale. And then just notice how your body feels. Notice where your mind went, probably got pulled away, got distracted. So just come back to the body again. And just recognizing that you took time to listen, to sit still, to be with your body, to start to regulate those emotions, to slow them down. And I always like to close with my palms together, bringing your thumbs to your sternum. This is what we call the Anjali Mudra, or this little prayer symbol, the symbolism of gratitude and just being grateful for our body. And if you can think of one specific thing you're grateful for, and then just notice how that gratitude starts to feel a felt sense in our body. Where can you feel that gratitude? Might help to just whisper it out loud, or if it's a person, you can say thank you. And just recognizing that gratitude can change the felt sense in our body and start to help also to regulate that nervous system, to just have gratitude. And then when you're ready, you can just come back to the space and gently opening up your eyes. And then just notice how it feels. Like, look around the room, what feels different? How does your body feel different? And then again, sometimes those don't work. So if you were too activated and maybe too distracted, those breathing exercises did nothing for you. So recognize, again, like Julie said, like being aware of where your client's at, where you're at, so that you can be more productive, and that mindfulness actually will be helpful. Do we want to do a breakout? Do you want to just share together? Julie, I'm going to let you make that call.
Well, we have 10 minutes left. Is that right,
Okay.
Erin? So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So with our 10 minutes left, I just wanted to talk a little bit. The things that I'll be talking about comes from nonviolence communication. It's a great book. The the way that we kind of move into this collaboration and help our clients move into a collaboration, it took my brain a minute. Sorry, guys. I was nice and so calm.
Do you want me to share the screen, or do you want to just talk?
It's okay. I'll just talk. because I want to be able to give you guys a few minutes. If there is like a question that you guys want to ask, you can put them in the chat now. But the way that we move kind of towards this collaboration is through noticing in ourselves what do we feel when we're asking for something or when we're in conflict or you know a common is when the question comes up, what's for dinner? This can be kind of triggering for myself, for my sister. We have many conversations about this. Like, it is one that kind of like, even now, I start to feel like my nervous system start to like activate just by talking about it. So, when I say I would like when I think about what's for dinner, okay, how can I get the family to kind of come together? Okay, here's my request. I want us to all like think about a menu, kind of pitch in on this. Now, why? Why do I want to ask this request? What is the value that I'm trying to get to? And the value is one, I want everybody in the family to be seen and to enjoy dinner and for it to be a positive experience. So my values, like, right, but I have to get below that. Like, what really is there? Connection. I want there to be connection around dinner time. I want us to all be seen. So this is my value. I want also too that when I cook something and I'm taking that time because food is really love in my culture and like with me, it's like if I feed you, I would really hope that you would take my food. Right? Because even then, like that to me is like my value is that's how I share my love. That's what I'm putting my time and my energy into. And so I want this to be a positive connection. So then I come back to what am I feeling when somebody doesn't want to help with that process? I get really frustrated. I get really angry. I get sad. And all of those emotions start to come up. So when I'm looking at the conflict and I slowly start to break it down, that helps me get to how can I build this back up? Okay, I feel really sad and frustrated when we talk about dinner, but everybody just goes, I don't know. Because it hits my value. Like to me, my need is I want to be valued, the time that I spend, and that this is my way of showing love. And so there's my need. I need to be loved. I need people know that I love them and I want this connection. And then my ask is, can we come together and come up with a menu that we all enjoy? Right? So these are kind of the steps that we can get to help towards collaboration. But also, when we start asking the questions, because it's going to take, like, this has been something that I've been working on for a while. So, like, I kind of see my needs, I see my, like, my emotions. But when we come to different conflicts, sometimes it's going to take us a little bit longer to get to, okay, what is the need? What is the emotion? And sometimes those things are really hard to get to because the conflict is protecting our emotions. They're protecting our needs. Our conflict styles are protecting those things. So we want to make sure that we take the time, we ask the questions. Curiosity allows us to be more open in our emotional regulation. So then that way we can figure out what this is really underneath all of this. So then we can become more collaborative. We can see each other's needs. Now I can see you as a human, whereas before I was just calling you every name in the book, right? Now I can be like, oh, they're a human. They have needs. I have needs. Now we can kind of connect and come together towards this collaboration. So I apologize, I was really quick. Are there any questions? See, collaboration's easy. We just got to do like a 5-minute step and then we're there.
Actually,
Alexander.
actually, I've read 3 books from Marshall Rosenberg in nonviolent communication, and I find it incredibly difficult in places that have been historically entrenched and stuck in places. And I mean, the ideas make sense, but the application, especially with some trauma in the relationship, can be really hard. I guess I'm curious to know more resources on how to learn to consult on applying this, because I think as easy as it is to say, okay, observe, identify the feelings, use those feelings to try to identify your needs and make a specific request, and find how those requests can collaborate because you're aware of those underlying needs and that they're actually not conflictual. I think that practical aspect, I feel like I want more help and support and collaboration and learning and dialoguing about that, because it feels more complex than just that.
And I'm going to let Amanda talk about
Yeah,
this because she
thanks.
actually taught this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a good question, Alexander. I want to be honest, I also struggle with nonviolent communication as much as I love it. And I think what helps me, and maybe this is for all of us, we can think about a relationship we have where we can start to practice it that is a healthy relationship. And what does it look like are we doing it there first? I think that's a good place to start. Because like Julie's examples, like you can do that with your family. You can ask them, you can express my needs. Am I letting people know how I feel? Am I actually naming the emotions that I have? Am I getting good practice with like the people that are in my life? Because I think a lot of times one of my favorite sayings, it's like start close in. That's if you can't do that, like forget the other stuff. Like we can't do it anyway. But if you're already doing that, Alexander, like that's awesome. And like keep doing that. And I don't know necessarily as far as like specific NVC resources for you. But I do think as you start to practice it close in, develop those skills, learn how to name your emotions, teach your kids how to do it, work with your partner on it. And then you can do the next step. Like, is it my cohort that I'm at work with, or where's my next step I can start to ripple that out? We do have Julie was going to talk a little bit about actually,
HPI.
I'm going to put it in the
Yeah.
chat and then she can tell you about an opportunity for a training that might be helpful.
Yeah, so with the Harvey Peace Institute, the HPI, there is a mediation certificate if you guys are looking for more of this transformational um, mediation. Like, how do we take what we've learned as a foundation here and like take that and maybe like learn more about how to do specific things? So I actually took this course so I can say, like, as a participant, I went into the room thinking like, okay, this is going to be easy. Here I am at like social work. I got my skills. And then I realized like there's parts of it where it's really intuitive and it's very much what we do. And then there's other parts that I like looked at conflict a little bit different, like the idea between compromise and collaboration, like getting to collaboration more was something that was like, oh yeah, I it clicks and it makes sense, but it took me a minute to get there. Um, and I was in a room with mediators of all kinds. We had HR representatives, we had mental health representatives. So it was a really mixed pot of people, and it was really cool to come together. So if you're interested, Amanda put that link in, and just reach out if you guys have questions about that. But I want to respect it's 1:30 and I apologize we didn't get to more questions, but our emails are available. And if you want to reach out to us, please, we love answering questions, collaborating more, talking more about it. So thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you both
everybody.
so much. Sorry, Amanda, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I just was saying thank you. And then also just if there's a workshop in April that has like 4 spots left, if you want to sign up, if you are a alumni, a student, a faculty, we do strong discounts for, I think it's like half off, but sign up, reach out, let me know if you want to be part of that. The next one that's in Salt Lake in April. In November, it'll be in Logan. And again, I like really great people. It's really cool to have a cohort of people that want to improve themselves, but also improve their ability to work better, to use nonviolent communication, to use these mediation skills, to be better peace builders. So if you want you don't have to like want to be a professional mediator to do it, but thank you guys for participating. It's so fun to see you. And sorry, I talked way more than Julie, and you should have like listened to Julie because she's so fun and funny, and I went over. So thank you. Thanks everyone for being here.
It was a great session. Thank you both so much. I did put that link to the feedback survey in the chat. If it's gone now because everyone's saying thank you, don't worry. I will be sending everyone in the session today a follow-up email with that link, so don't worry. But thanks everyone for spending your time with us this Friday. Thank you, Julie and Amanda, for sharing your expertise. This was really great. So, everyone have a nice weekend.